Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with a DVD review of a DVD that I'm sure that you guys might not even know exist. Of course, this is going to be The Power of the Freight Train. This is a 2-disc set that came out through Highspots. It is a documentary on the Hulk Hogan / John Cena, the top dog of $5 wrestling. We've got a Freight Train here. Freight Train, one of the most beloved men in professional wrestling. If you've ever been able to check out one of the $5 wrestlings, a very, very nice man. I was able to meet this guy twice, once in New Orleans. I did a really fast interaction with him. I just wanted to get a picture with him because I was a fan of $5 wrestling. I popped in $5 Wrestling, Volume 1 and Volume 2. One time when I was hanging out with Freaking Yaya 88, we were in LA for SummerSlam. I just happened to toss them in my bag. I thought it would have been a fun way to kill some time. And man, we laughed all night long. Possibly the best $10 that I've ever spent in professional wrestling was on those first two editions of $5 Wrestling, Volume 1 and Volume 2. They've come out with, I'm guessing, probably at least 12 to 15 different shows to be able to check out. Freight Train, I believed, joined $5 Wrestling. It might be on the second, or it might have been on the third show. But man, every single one of these shows really delivers. You get your money's worth. They went as far as to make their own pay-per-views and pay-per-views and things like that. And for $5 Wrestling to grow from really nothing to being something. It was a great story for Freight Train, for Jake Manning, the man behind $5 Wrestling, and anybody else that got into it. I first found out about $5 Wrestling from listening to The Art of Wrestling, and Colt Cabana did a simple plug for it, talking about this is one of his upcoming projects, and he was hoping as wrestling fans that we would go check it out and see what we thought about it. On the Christmas episode that just came out of The Art of Wrestling, Colt Cabana hosted the episode, of course, with his $5 Wrestling co-host, and they talked about basically $5 Wrestling isn't around anymore. They haven't ran a show in a long time, and basically Marty DeRosa talks about that he still gets texts from Ready to Rock, saying that he's ready to rock anytime that they want to have a show, and hopefully someday Jake Manning will put something together. But this is probably the best way to put $5 Wrestling to bed if it really is not going to be around anymore. Freight Train, we never would have known this guy as a professional wrestler if it wasn't for $5 Wrestling giving him a home. They talk a little bit about what $5 Wrestling, came from, and it started with Jake Manning. I guess you can say is the booker, writer, basically the guy who puts all of the shows together, and you either love Jake Manning or you probably don't know who he is. He's a really good wrestler, and he basically got tired of the fact that he was a really good wrestler, but he wasn't getting the breaks that good wrestlers deserved. And if he wasn't going to be on the best wrestling shows, he was going to make sure that he was on the worst wrestling shows. So he put these together of basically just outcast wrestlers that wrestled in his area that people could have fun with. Basically, if you don't know $5 Wrestling, or you've only seen a match or a match here or there, for somebody that watches a few of the shows, you really get into these characters. That's why Freight Train is one of the most loved people in professional wrestling. I've met Freight Train twice, once at WrestleMania 30, at WrestleCon, and then again at WrestleMania 31. At WrestleMania 30, it was just basically, I bought some DVDs from him at the Highspots table. I asked him for a picture, and then basically I was on my way. At WrestleMania 31, I spent some time with the man. I bought his documentary exactly from him. I actually bought the last volume of $5 Wrestling, and then I asked him for a picture. I didn't know about it, but I purchased The Power of the Freight Train, and then I also got Bon Voyage. Bon Voyage, the last show, is actually on disc 2 of the Freight Train documentary, so you don't need to get it. I sort of felt carnied once I came home and I made my merch mania video of all the things that I bought at WrestleMania, and I talked about, you know, getting this DVD and picking it up, and somebody actually pointing out the fact that I didn't need to buy Bon Voyage and Freight Train. I guess you can say carded me out of $5. But if you go to the Highspot's webpage, they sell this Freight Train documentary for $20. He sold me the 2 DVDs, and he gave me a picture for $20. So I might have swindled him out of some money, and that sort of makes me feel bad. But I stood there and I talked to Freight Train for a good little while. He wanted to know what I thought was going to happen with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and I had a fun little conversation. And I'm really hoping that even though you know, $5 wrestling isn't going to be a part of upcoming WrestleCon, that I hope he's there, because he wrestled at the WrestleCon Super Show. This is turning into like a WrestleCon commercial, basically. But that show was so much fun, and he was a part of a big 10-man tag. I believe he teamed with Colt Cabana and the Dudleys, and it was one hell of a 10-man tag. It was packed full of so many people. James Storm, Abyss, Gulak. Man, I remember just having so much fun. I can't really remember everybody. It might even have been a 12-man tag. The money that was spent on the booking for that show was just out of this world. It's hard to even think how they made any money off of that deal. But the power of the Freight Train, it tells the story of Freight Train getting into professional wrestling, having to go basically from school to school. Basically, he paid some money to get into one school, train there for a while. It closed down. They didn't give him a refund. Then he had to go find another school. Basically, you know, Freight Train and his mom just wanted him to get into professional wrestling because it was something that he really loved to do, and it was something that, you know, it sort of gave Freight Train an outlet to, you know, be himself and do what he does. I first really, you know, fell in love with Freight Train, honestly, from listening to The Art of Wrestling. Now we're turning into an Art of Wrestling cartoon, or a commercial here, but basically it was the episode with Jake Manning very early on in the run. Jake Manning talked about Freight Train, talked about, you know, bringing him to WrestleMania, and I think this might have been the WrestleMania 28 or the WrestleMania 29 show, and just Jake Manning talking about what it means to Freight Train to show up at you know, WrestleCon, and people actually come up and get autographs and pictures, and what he does, you know, with that money. And basically, he is a dishwasher at home, and I believe he lives in the Carolina area. And basically, you know, if somebody gets a picture for $5 at his merch table, that's almost like an hour's worth of work that he doesn't have to do at home, because, you know, being a dishwasher in the Carolinas, down in the South, it's not the biggest high-paying job of all time. But, you know, in this documentary, we see the rise of Freight Train. Basically, due to some fan funding, Freight Train is able to take a trip overseas to wrestle in England, which is a pretty big deal. And that's a big bulk of the documentary, once you get past, you know, the birth of $5 wrestling and him getting into training. And they really do spare no expense. They go find the trainers that train Freight Train, even the ones that took advantage of him to get their side of the story, over, you know, the gym's closing and things like that. And some just say it is what it is, and some try to make up explanations to you know, why it happened, and try to not look like the bad guy. But honestly, if you knew anything about $5 wrestling, or you watched and collected them and maybe thought that this DVD might not have been the best, I'm here to tell you, man, Jake Manning really did his best and put together a great documentary. This is the power of the Freight Train. You get some pictures of Freight Train there on the back, and you got a lot of words if you want to, you know, pause the video and read everything that's on the back of there. But a really great DVD. I understand this isn't going to be for everybody, but this really was for me. It really touched me. I thought it was really, really good. You know, they even go to the depths of getting a doctor to talk about Freight Train and Asperger's, and really explain to people who don't really know what Asperger's might be, about, you know, what it is. About basically people with Asperger's, they sort of get in depth into things, and then they really can't stop, you know, either learning or talking, or, you know, trying to get more involved in what they're doing. And for Freight Train, he loves trains and he loves professional wrestling, and you can't hate the fact for a guy chasing his dream to be the best professional wrestler they can be, and $5 Wrestling for giving him an outlet to do there. But you got your the documentary packed full of extras, and you get a little director's commentary from Jake Manning at the end, just telling his side of the story about what he was trying to get across with this film. You flip over to disc 2, you got the $5 Wrestling Bon Voyage show, if you've never seen a $5 Wrestling. And then you've also got Freight Train going up against the evil Jake Manning feud. I believe it was at WrestleMania 29, WrestleMania I didn't attend, that Jake Manning turned on Freight Train to build up one of the biggest $5 wrestling feuds of all time. So check this out if you know anything about it. If not, Power of the Freight Train High Spots, or just when you're at WrestleCon, head on over to the High Spots table, because I'm sure they'll have some versions for sale.